welcome to Furious Driving, and you join me today at the wheel of a Mini Clubman. No, not the big one with 6 doors. This is the original 4-door, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. 1976 Sand Glow in an A series. Does life get better than this? Not really. And if you like reviews of interesting, different and unusual cars, and classics and retros alike, then do please hit like and definitely smash that subscribe button. Now, a word from our sponsors, and on with the show.
Proud to be sponsored by Diamond Bright, the car care products that have been keeping the Furious fleet looking their best for a long time already. To find all you need to keep your car clean and protected, follow the link below to diamondbright.co.uk.
Hello, welcome to Furious Driving, and today you know it's going to be fun because we're looking at one of the most entertaining, fun, happy cars on the planet. Yes, it's a Mini, a car that always gets a free pass for a fun day out because, you know, it's a Mini. They're hilarious, they're brilliant. And this one in Sand Glow is perfect for its autumn day, and it's a 1976 AD020 Clubman Estate. Let's take a look around. So where did the Clubman come from? Well, by the late 1960s, the Mini was approaching its 10th birthday. The classic Isogonus style really hadn't changed beyond minor details, and most of those under the skin. BMC Managing Director Joe Edwards was aware that there were issues with his company's lineup. There are too many brand names, too many models, too much platform sharing, and too much stagnation. They were selling a lot of cars but not really making a lot of money. And one of the main things that he wanted was a fresher, easier to build, cheaper to build Mini. And he was prepared to do pretty much anything to do that. So he went to Ford and poached one of their chief stylists and product planners, a guy called Roy Haynes, and set him the task of coming up with a new development on the car. And this is what he designed. Actually, he designed far more than this. We'll come back to that in a minute. The main thing which survived is the Clubman front. So the new front end is unmistakable, maybe not as iconic as the original, but certainly has got a lot of fans among the world of Mini. It was about 10 centimetres longer, and that gives you a whole bunch of advantages. It's better in a crash, it gives way better access to the engine. You haven't got to take the grille out in order to access front parts of it. And looking to the recent past, engine transplants are much easier under the bonnet of one of these. So if you want to see a Honda VTEC or a Vauxhall Red Top underneath the bonnet of a Mini, a Clubman's the place to start. Now these days the Mini's naming conventions have become a bit dislocated from their origins. This, being a Clubman, meant the square front end. These days the Clubman means the double back doors. Likewise the name Countryman, that used to mean the estate. That now means a huge SUV thing. Never mind. But this, the original Countryman, a Clubman, had a big job to do. It had 4 roles to fill. They wanted to lose the Wolseley Hornet and the Riley Elf because they had the little square boots, different front ends. They were very expensive to remake and didn't make enough profit, but they wanted a higher end, posher halo car, so the Clubman was taking over that role. And when the estate version came out, it had to replace both the Countryman and the Traveller. So it was doing the job of 4 different cars in the Mini lineup. So this one vehicle had to do the job of 4 different cars in the Mini lineup. And that was part of Roy Haynes' plan for streamlining the BMC product lineup. He didn't want the badge engineering of the same vehicle with different badges on the nose of all the different cars. He wanted one car that did one thing, and Mini was becoming a brand in its own right by now. And the Clubman ran from 1969 all the way through to 1980. When it was discontinued, but the regular Mini managed to carry on, even though this is meant to replace it. But this being a 1976 car is a very, very late Mark 1. That means it still has the fake wood trim down the side. This is one of the greatest accessories you can find in the car. Give me fake wood trim, pop-up headlights and headlamp wipers, and I am in absolute car heaven. Make it on a brown estate and I'm even happier, so this is a great day. In 1976, the Mark 1 was updated with a Mark 2, obviously, and then we lost the fake wood and got stick-on stripes instead, which I imagine were significantly cheaper to apply. This car is also quite a rarity because of the engine. Let's take a quick look at that. Here under the bonnet we find an A series, that stalwart motor of so many Austin Morris BL, BMC cars throughout the 60s, 70s and 80s and even into the 90s. In this car, it's a 1098cc, and there's quite a rarity to have one under the bonnet of this because these cars started out with a 998cc A-series making all of 38 horsepower. Alternatively, you could have the 1275 GT, which made 59 horsepower, but that's more of a Cooper rival than your everyday cooking model. However, from 1975, they decided to upgrade to the 45 horsepower 1098, which you see here, the little 1100. which gave it a bit more oomph than before. 75.5 Newton meters of torque as well as 45 horsepower, a 0 to 60 of 18.9, a top speed of 82 miles an hour and 34 miles per gallon. Now it may not sound rapid, but when you're in a little buzz box as small as this, so close to the floor, it does feel extremely rapid. And of course it's the way the thing corners as well will make it feel even faster, because you're getting around the bends quicker than any bigger rivals that may accelerate quicker. I say this is a rare model because it only gained the 1098 in 1975, then in 1976 it lost the stick-on fake wood for the stickers, so getting the combination of the better engine and the better trim is something of a rarity. This is the Goldilocks moment. And looking under the bonnet, you can see how much extra space that 10 centimetres of additional nose has given the engine bay. There were still cries from the motoring press to make more changes, for example putting the radiator on the front of the car so it would be less prone to overheating, and also it would protect the electrics from water ingress, which is always a problem with Minis, getting the electrics along the front of the car wet and the thing conking out. You forget how small an A-Series is till you look at one right up close. So around the back we carried on with the old Traveller and Countryman style of the twin barn doors, which made the thing significantly more practical than a regular Mini. You could actually put an entire person in the boot if you really wanted to. Proof, if you like. It's not very comfortable, but a fit. Interestingly, there is nothing holding this left-hand door shut, just this rather rudimentary up and down to the floor and ceiling bolt system on the right hand side door just here. Now, although this has been copied on the current generation Countryman, this wasn't what Roy Haynes wanted to do. They actually got as far as building styling proposals of a proper hatchback. This is a, technically four-door estate, but they wanted to do a three-door hatchback that would have been a world leader at the time. It would have stolen the march on the competition and put the car generations ahead, which is actually very close in thinking to Izzy Gonis' own updated replacement Mini proposal from around the same kind of time. The designers and product planners wanted to move to a hatchback format. The management just wasn't interested. They thoroughly poo-pooed the idea. Even 10 years later in the late 70s, when I think it was Autocar were doing an article on the ways the Mini should be improved. One of them was a hatchback 10 years after the proposal to turn it into a hatchback was disregarded. Anyway, what we have here though is a practical four-door, two-door estate. Let's have a look in the front. When Roy Haynes defected from Ford, he brought a couple of other designers with him. A couple of young guys called Roy Axe and Paul Hughes. Now, Paul Hughes had been with him on the Mark II Cortina project, which he just finished before he left Ford. And you can see the influences, because Paul Hughes did the Cortina and then he did the interior of the Clubman. And you can see this three-spoke steering wheel is straight from the Cortina playbook. And there's a few other changes we'll come to in a second. First of all, the door cards. There's only 4 items on there. The lock, a grab handle, manual winder, and the actual handle to get out of the car. No adjuster for the mirror, a stick hand out the window, nothing else electric, no door pockets, just this pressed vinyl thing with pretend stitches, with moulded in stitches just to give a bit of visual interest, break the thing up. It's quite a nice design, circle around the window winder and the matching little lines around the other parts. Stepping inside, very, very narrow door sill, big box section exposed underneath, giving some structural rigidity across the side. A little harder to get in because we've got the bucket seats, but the interesting thing with the Mini is even though it's such a tiny car, there is an absolute ton of headroom and elbow room and everything room inside the thing, which is incredible. So we've got the same basic structure of the dashboard, large T-shelf area, small car, big T-shelf. I think that was the strapline they used back in the 1960s. And underneath it we have a large sub T-shelf, so drinks up top, sandwiches down below. Now traditionally, the thing the Mini is famous for, and the thing they went straight back to with the R50 and the 2001 onward Minis, was a giant centre instrument binnacle, a big round speedo here in the centre. For the Clubman, they went away from that. They went for a more traditional 2-dial instrument binnacle here in front of the steering wheel. So you've got the speedo on the left going up to 90 miles an hour, and the little cluster showing the fuel gauge and temperature on the right hand side, all surrounded by oh-so 60s and 70s silver paint on black plastic. It really couldn't come from any other decade looking like that, could it? In between our 2 T-shelves and outside of our little dashboard display, we've got a pair of little eyeball vents, one on the right and one over furthest on the way on the left. We've got a single speaker for our radio, which is slung underneath the dashboard, and we've got a little roll-out ashtray, another 1970s absolute favourite. The owner has added a few extra dials here. We've got our rev counter here, and down to the right hand side he's added a few extra dials here underneath the dashboard. So down here we've got our amp meter, oil pressure, and a Smith's vacuum gauge, which I think gives you an idea of your economy while you're driving. Over in the centre we have very sparse controls indeed. We've got our choke, because it's a carburettor car, wipers, washers, lights and log fire. So stoke the fire with that one, and our heater controls underneath it, which are super basic. On and off is literally it, car screen and off just there. So yeah, not much going on there. The steering wheel, as I say, is pure Mark II Cortina. Even the little centre logo looks like it's come from the Ford factory. But slim rimmed, hard plastic, does the job. Now, I can't really comment on the original seats because they're no longer here. We've got these rather nice racing bucket type things here instead. But this is the fabric our original seats would have been covered in. A festival of brown on the interior. It's not velour, it's like a soft, I don't know what you call it, fluffy type material. Not quite fleece, not quite velour. But it does have the option to fold over and fold those back seats down to turn this into a tiny little minivan, which is super helpful and useful. Right, let's get this little puppy on the road. A-Series fires straight into life. We've got the 4-speed gearbox, standard H pattern with lift for reverse, but we're not going backwards, we're going forwards, tiny bit of choke, and away we go. Oh, listen to that A-Series whine, it's brilliant. Out of the way, tiny bird. Oh, it's so responsive. And the steering is so direct and sharp on these things. Obviously it's not power assisted, but you do have an amazing connected feeling to the car. So much fun! All 45 horsepower screaming away there, it's brilliant! Now the pedal travel is just minute. You're dipping the clutch by barely twisting, moving your ankle that much. It's tiny, tiny amounts. And for such a small engine, at 75.5 Newton meters of torque is significant enough to be rapid. I love the sound of an A-Series accelerating. Now, although the Mini is famous for its hydroelastic suspension, the Clubman didn't get that. That got its donut and cone solid rubber setup. Although the owner has adjusted this one slightly. It hasn't really affected the ride, he says, but it is a lot lower, so it looks better. Like I said, the handling though is incredibly tight. Doing 40 miles an hour, and it does feel rapid. That was the thing with the Mini. You're not going terribly fast, but you feel like you're bowling along like crazy. A little bit bouncy, but quite a bit of body control, so always good. Even doing 40 miles an hour on a B road, you can see instantly why these were such good racing cars. So much control with the tiny little A and B posts. Huge visibility out the front, and behind me there's massive sliding windows. You can just see literally forever. Now interestingly, we've got a right-hand indicator stalk, not a left-hand indicator stalk, which is curious, but I guess it's a sign of the times. Mini. Mini is such a global brand these days. You cannot throw a rock without hitting one. Now it is interesting that the Clubman was intended to be a revision that ultimately replaced the old standard round-fronted Mini, but come 1980 the Clubman itself was replaced by the Metro, yet the original Mini soldiered on for another 20 years until 2000. I guess sometimes being an icon isn't all about being better. Today, following BMW's purchase and then sale and then breaking up of the Rover Group, and keeping of Mini, the Mini is now firmly associated with Cowley, just outside Oxford. And although these cars started out being built in Cowley in 1969, in 1970, just, well, months into production, they moved production over to Longbridge. So the Clubman is very definitely a Longbridge Birmingham car. Think the Rover factory, if you like. But that is kind of where our story with Roy Haynes ends as far as BMC is concerned, because his wife had a thriving business down in Essex, and while he'd been happy to commute to Cowley every day, he wasn't happy to commute to Birmingham. So after just 2 years with the company, he left BMC in 1969, just as his first big project hit the market. These cars really are just unmistakably mini. The vibration, the noise, the smell, it's a little kind of hint of petrol when you get in. It's all just so perfectly mini, I love it. And the thing is, the car is absolutely tiny on the outside, but as I said before, it does not feel small on the inside. I've got more space than if I was in a Land Rover Defender, to be honest. And being the Estate, it's got a slightly longer wheelbase as well, so it doesn't feel bouncy and jittery. It feels nicely planted on the road. But these were still living up to the Mini name. Even the longer Estate is only 3.4 metres long, and it's still 1.4 metres wide, or 1410 millimetres to be exact. And the thing only weighs 687 kilos dry. You can basically carry it around with you if you can't find a parking space. And the thing that I really hate is that lovers of the classic Mini always say that the new Mini isn't the same, it's not got the same spirit. The new car has got so much of these original cars' spirit and feel. It captured it so well. Of course, whizzing around in this thing, it does just make me want a Mini an awful lot. So much fun. I could have waved another Mini. The colour of this thing is perfect, 1970s sand glow. You can't get a better shade for a car like this, can you? And I like the modifications the owner's done as well. The little Rostyle wheels, the slightly lowered suspension, these bucket seats, all work so well on this thing. Now, I love an Estate car, and this is ticking a lot of boxes right now. So if you've enjoyed this review, then please, as always, hit like and definitely smash the likes button. And if you've enjoyed it that much, hit the bell notification to find out when the next one's due out. And join me again next week driving something completely different.